Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever and whenever you're happy watching. This is Risco in Tokyo coming at you with a little bite-sized planet tutorial. We're going to be talking today about a specter haunting Craft World. The specter of this dude up here, the checkpoint. Checkpoints and sensors hate players. They hate sack things. They hate fun. But first we got to get to our lab. So let's get over there. Now hold on a second. We passed 2 checkpoints. Why did we get sent all the way back to the start checkpoint? There's 1 checkpoint, there's 2, and yet, death. Well, you see, folks, this checkpoint back here, it's too far back. Too far back. Checkpoints only operate 3 layers ahead of the player. This is 4, too far back. But here, no problems at all. But what about this checkpoint? It's too high up. Check this out. And it's triggered. Now, let's actually turn off that trap and head over to our actual lab. Now, as we said before, checkpoints have no sensors in the back. They only trigger ahead of the checkpoint naturally. So, as long as we're within that 3-layer range, it'll trigger. If we're outside of it, like here, it will not. Now, as we said before, the checkpoints, they can't be too high either. And too high is basically anything that's over the eye height of the sack character. So here, got just about right at the edge of the eye line, and it triggers. Here we've got it around the ear. We would assume the ear is on a sack thing, and it triggers. But anything above that, and it's too high up. Now, weird thing, it's like the checkpoints were designed by Quentin Tarantino because they have no problem with feet. Knees? Sure. Ankles? Absolutely. The soles of your feet, those will trigger the checkpoint. Don't know why that is, and it's not something that comes in super handy because you're probably not going to be triggering too many checkpoints that are below you when you're playing, but something maybe to keep in mind, something that you could play with. Now, as we said, sometimes you might want to trigger checkpoints that are out of natural range of the player for aesthetics. Maybe you've got like a really wide, deep hallway and you want the checkpoint set in the back. In that case, you'll need to have something else triggering it, because a checkpoint can be triggered like any other piece of logic. So here we're using just simple player sensors. And this one, it would have normally been too far back, but we pull the effective range up all the way to the front so that there's no way that it's going to miss the player as they walk by. Now, you do notice that this range does need to be larger. For some reason, player sensors don't trigger in the same area that checkpoints trigger on. They tend to trigger like in the body itself, but funny thing, now it's a little bit hard to tell from this angle, but this ring here is actually higher up than this ring here, and yet this is not triggering. Why? I don't know. I honestly have no idea. This should be triggering just fine, and it's not. So if you're using an alternate way to trigger your checkpoints, if you've got the actual trigger on the checkpoint itself, make sure that the sensor is going deeper than you need it to be. So we got the sensor here going all the way into the ground, and really that's the best for us. Or just put the sensor somewhere away from the checkpoint. Like here. Triggered no problem at all. And there we go. Now, because checkpoints can be triggered like any other bit of logic, you can play around with these a little bit, do puzzles for them. Now we see in this room, we want to be getting up to that checkpoint up there, because if we die, it takes us out of the room. So that's not very useful. We want to actually complete this level. So I set up a really easy bit of logic here. LBP1 era, just about. Got the old actual physics-based switches. And as we get all these triggered, those trigger the checkpoints, kill the player, and there you go. And we've completed our level. So these are just some things that we can be doing with our checkpoints. Nothing really big, nothing really major, but we do want to be making sure that players aren't going to be missing checkpoints. It happens to me, it's been happening to me a lot recently, to be honest. I don't know why that is. I've been running into it an awful lot recently. So basic takeaways: don't put your checkpoints too far back. Don't put your checkpoints too far up. And if you do feel like you need to do those things, then make sure that they're getting triggered in some other way, like a handy player sensor. But I think that pretty much... Hello. I think that pretty much does it for us here, Disco About. So, from me, Disco, here in Tokyo, to all of you out there, wherever you may happen to be, thank you, arigato, sayonara, see you, and ciao.